do I need to be right or do I want peace? And I think like that's like another way of navigating it, of just like some of it is like an external force, but like at least a way for me to check myself of like what is it that I'm like having a conflict about or wanting to confront about, is do I want to be right or do I want peace? And like by answering that question, I think I'm then at least equipped of navigating it forward, of letting it go and moving on, of figuring out that I'm still holding on to something and I want to address it, or just like figuring out like what are the next steps. So that's something that like for me, and that's something that works for me in like in like an array of different relationships, be it at work. For work, it just feels like a very clear example for me, because like, does being right even matter in a work setting? If I'm working at a mission driven organization and I have a project to work on, like there's a difference there.
That's actually really important because, it's hard to know, like, right is such a definite sort of like statement, right? Like, and so often even what we might have thought was correct, at some point we could look back on that and even through our own growth be like, oh, was I, could have handled it differently, or maybe that wasn't the right perspective, or maybe you really think you are, and then circumstances and experiences show you otherwise. And this is all a part of learning and growing and evolving and developing. But I think it's true. It's like, if you don't need to be right, then maybe it's more just about feeling as though you're heard, that you're able to express your opinion, that it was noted, that you were allowed to contribute, that there was a perspective that was taken into consideration, and that there was that sense of space, and grace and trust that was offered, during that experience. Um, yeah. No, that's interesting. Like, there are people who feel like a really strong need to be the ones who are right. Or if they feel like they're right, where they feel like that is something that they won't relent on, even if it means bringing more ease and peace, to a greater situation. And I think sometimes there is also a point of self reflection for those people or for that person to ask themselves, what's the driver behind that? Is it that not being right in this situation is actually going to create some kind of irrevocable damage that is avoidable? Like, is that coming from a do no harm place in principle? Or is that coming from, a whole nother set of sort of like experiences that maybe has less to do with that workplace and that decision, and more to do with sort of that person's own sense of being, worth, value, sort of, or how they express themselves, or need to be expressed. And that's interesting because, it's very hard to answer that question for somebody else.
Well, and rightfully so, because we're all so different, and we all have different metrics of like what is right, what is the bottom line of what I'm trying to get from this. And sometimes you're just so in the heat of the moment, you don't even know what your bottom line is. You're just arguing for argument's sake. So it's also like everyone, like it's an internal gut check is more so like my idea behind that question
Mhm.
of like, do I need to be right? Like, what is it that I want from this? And if you don't know the answer to that, then maybe that's like a point of pause, reflect, cool off. And if you do know the answer to that, then it's like I can go in this way or this way. But the point is like we have to own our own things from this. So it's just like if you don't know why you're behaving in this way, then like bench yourself, and sort it out and then figure it out. It's just like there's ways of just navigating yourself rather than being so reactive,
Mm.
and just like having that intentionality throughout.